Welcome back to my analog life. Today I want to talk about YouTube setups, and in particular my YouTube setup. So I've been asked by a few people about setting up their own YouTube channel and how they go about it, how they go about lighting it, and is it affordable. So today I thought I would talk through a couple of setups that I'm using at the moment, even though I'm still learning and adapting to different things. So I'm adapting to this space, which is totally alien to the space that I've been using before, which was my home studio. So today I'll talk through my setup and I'll run through the costs. So let's get into it. So when looking to get into making YouTube videos, one thing that people ask is, what camera do I use? I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but most of the time I say, have you got a smartphone? So if you have a smartphone, most phones these days will take video, do slow-mo, and the camera is pretty good. So yeah, if you've got to have a smartphone to hand, start off using that and see how you get on. There's obviously other things on the market. So we have things like the Canon G7X, which has the flip screen. Again, pretty reasonable price. Let's say reasonable price, it's around £500. So it's a bit of an outlay, but compared to some pieces of equipment, it is actually relatively cheap. You could go down another alternative, which is the GoPro. So this is the GoPro Hero 7. Again, not a bad little device. For me, I'm not interested, or not interested is the wrong word. For me, I don't like the wide angle camera. I just find it a bit strange. Even on linear mode, it's a bit too wide. So if there was a facility to make this less wide, you know, equivalent to like a 35 to 50mm, then I'd be really happy. I haven't tried the GoPro Hero 8 yet, but Lee, my friend and partner in this studio, he's got the DJI Osmo Action, and the good thing about that is it's got a camera on the front of the camera. It's got a screen, so you can see yourself. So if you are doing vlogging, you can actually see what it's filming, which is absolutely fantastic. And one thing that a lot of people prefer, that's one thing about the G7X, it does have this flippy screen, which means you can see yourself when you're vlogging. Another alternative is a DSLR. Obviously, depending on your budget, this was my second camera, my Canon 6D, and this was what I actually started my YouTube channel on. So all of my early channels where I'm sat in my ex-girlfriend's dining room, on the dining room table, they were all filmed on this camera. There are limitations, obviously. This one doesn't have autofocus, but if you know about that and understand that, then you can make workarounds. Obviously from that, the next thing you need to think about is lighting. So there are lots of different lighting kits you can get. Obviously, if you watch a lot of YouTube, one of the most common lights you'll see is the Apurture. The Apurture range, so the 120D and the 300D or the 300X as well, including the light domes and everything. But like a lot of other people, I don't have the budget for those sort of things. I recently watched Peter McKinnons video on his YouTube setup, and totaling things up, I got to about £22,000 before I just decided, wow, that's crazy. Obviously, he's got the C500 Mark II, which is £17,000. So that was a massive chunk of it. But even the lights, like the Apurture 120D, is about just under £800, and the Apurture 300 is £1,200, which is a big investment. So what would I recommend and what do I use? So you could basically start off with something that is relatively cheap. So this is a work light from a place, I guess you would call it Home Depot. So this is a very cheap light that I actually use in the studio for when we do, so we run live drawing classes in the studio. So I would use this, bounce it up onto the wall and use it as a bit of an ambient room light, and then use my main key light to illuminate the models. But this light that I'm using now is something that I would highly recommend, and I'll actually go into the details and show the lights. So we actually have two of these, and this is the SL60W series from Godox. We did actually see that a Neewer do the same version, but I think Godox actually make the lights, and this is £124. So compared to the £800 and £1,200 of the Apurture, you know, you can have a fair few of these and get an amazing light setup. So yeah, let's walk around and show you my setup. Okay, so this is the space that we use as our kind of workspace, and I'll show you what we've got. So here we have the camera setup pointing at me, obviously. This is the softbox that I was talking about. So this is the Neewer softbox, which is the 90cm parabolic opt, and this is absolutely fantastic. I actually use this for my model photography. And again, as we say, this is the Godox SL60, which you have a thing on the back which you can control the percentage of light, and then on off switch you can rate it on different channels. It does actually come with a remote, which I'll show you in a minute. And then as we go around, I have the microphone on a boom pole. So as we sit here, this is basically the setup. The light, and then this is the remote. So it gives you control over the light, power it up and down. And yeah, and the camera there. And then what I'm using is two polystyrene boards, which again basically are on wheels, and they're just dead in between the door because there is quite a lot of noise outside. Okay, so if you didn't have a desk and you wanted a totally different look, you could be a little extra and create this setup. So here we have three lights. We have key light off to my left, and we have a hair light, rim light off to my right, and then there is actually the £10 cheap DIY light on the floor, lighting the backdrop. Again, you can change the backdrop. You can shoot against a white wall, a grey wall. I'm actually in my studio shooting on a colorama. So this is what it looks like without the hair light. And then just with the hair light. And then just with the background light. So there you go. That's a totally different setup. Something a bit extra. This is actually three lights. You could just use two lights. If you bring the light closer to the backdrop, this will actually illuminate the background and just separate you a bit more. But it totally depends on what kind of look you want to go for. For me personally, I'm not really bothered about three lights. I think the hair light looks a bit too false. It makes it 3D, but it just looks too false. In nature, you only have one source of light, which is the sun. So having a secondary light to separate you from the background, for me, it just looks artificial. So in my setup now, over there in the office bit or the table, I tend to just use a main key light. But anyway, there's options, and for the price, I think you can't go far wrong with this Godox setup. We are thinking about getting a third light, so again, we can do multiple interviews, and again, for my channel, when I do my artist insight, this setup's going to be absolutely perfect. Again, I've got the boom microphone just here. I'm not sure it's in shot, but so yeah, there's two totally different setups. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll do more in-depth look at each individual thing. So I'm going to be doing a shoot with this light, photographing a model, especially now that we can actually shoot since lockdown's eased a bit. And I'll test the different light modifiers and show you the way I shoot and what lighting patterns I get. And then I'll probably do more of an in-depth review on the SL60W light once I've used it a bit more. But anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.